Good morning, my dear friends. My name is Margaret Thompson. I'm 74 years old today, and I've carried this secret in my heart for more than 50 years. Before I begin, if this story touches you, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which city or country you're watching from. It truly keeps me going. Let's travel back to the spring of 1967. I was just 17, a shy girl from the outskirts of Detroit, daughter of factory workers who had moved north hoping for something better. That's when I met Richard, tall, broad-shouldered, with a quick smile and the confident stride of a man who knew the open road. He worked as a long-haul trucker, running routes between Detroit, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. In those days, a steady trucking job meant security. We courted for only 5 months before we stood together in a little wooden church, me in a simple white dress my mother had sewn, promising to love each other until death. Life wasn't easy at first. We rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment behind his uncle's garage. Richard was gone 3 or 4 nights a week, sometimes longer when the loads paid extra. I didn't mind, or at least I told myself I didn't. I believed every mile he drove was for our future. Soon our first son, Thomas, arrived. 2 years later came little Sarah, and 3 years after that, our youngest boy, Benjamin. 3 babies, endless diapers, nights alone, and me learning to stretch every dollar. It was during our 2nd year of marriage that Richard first mentioned his sister, Laura. He said she lived alone in Cleveland, suffered from a chronic illness that required expensive medicine and doctor visits. "She's the only family I have left, Margaret," he would say, those warm hazel eyes looking straight into mine. "I can't turn my back on her." Every single month, without fail, he set aside a thick envelope of cash, sometimes $100 or more, and mailed it to her. Even when our own children needed new shoes or the rent was tight, I stayed silent. I admired his loyalty. I thought it showed what a good man I had married. The years rolled on. We eventually moved into a modest 2-story house on the edge of the city. The children grew. Thomas became a quiet bookworm, Sarah loved drawing, and Benjamin was our little whirlwind. I took in sewing work from neighbors and later found a part-time job at a local fabric shop to help make ends meet. Richard's pay was decent, yet a large chunk always disappeared into that envelope for Laura. What struck me as odd, though I never voiced it, was that we never once visited her. No holidays, no birthdays, no Sunday dinners. Whenever I gently suggested we drive to Cleveland to meet her, Richard would change the subject. "She's very private, Margaret. The doctor says she needs quiet and no stress." I accepted it. In my generation, wives trusted their husbands. That was simply how things were. Then came the spring of 1980. We had been married 13 years. Thomas was 13, Sarah was 11, Benjamin was 8. I was helping Richard pack for what he called another big Pittsburgh run, a full week away. As I folded his favorite plaid work jacket, my fingers brushed something stiff in the inner pocket. I pulled out a colorful handmade birthday card. On the front, bright crayon flowers and glitter. Inside, in a child's careful printing, "Happy birthday, Daddy. We love you more than all the stars. Thank you for being the best father and husband in the world. Love forever, Laura and Emily." My hands turned to ice. Daddy? Husband? Who was Emily? Richard's birthday had been the month before. I had baked his favorite apple pie and given him new work gloves. He had seemed distracted that night, barely touching the pie. Now I understood why. I slipped the card in my dress pocket and said nothing when he left the next morning. He kissed my forehead, hugged the children, and promised to bring them each a small toy from the road. The door closed behind him, and the house felt suddenly hollow. In the days that followed, I moved through life like a ghost. I called his trucking company on a Wednesday afternoon, pretending to be checking on his schedule. The dispatcher sounded confused. "Richard? He didn't take any load to Pittsburgh this week, ma'am. He's been off the books for 4 days." The phone nearly slipped from my fingers. That same evening, while searching for the children's school papers, I opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Tucked beneath old logbooks, I found a second bank book from a Cleveland credit union and a folded note with an address on the east side of Cleveland. I copied it carefully and hid the paper inside our wedding photo frame. 2 weeks later, when Richard left again for Pittsburgh, I knew what I had to do. I walked the children to my neighbor Ruth's house, telling her I had urgent family business in Cleveland and would be back the next evening. With the little savings I kept in an old coffee tin, I bought a round-trip bus ticket. The 3-hour ride felt like forever. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure the lady beside me could hear it. When the bus finally pulled into Cleveland, I took a local streetcar to the quiet tree-lined street on the note. The address belonged to a neat white bungalow with a small sign in the front window, "Laura's Custom Curtains and Sewing." I stood on the sidewalk for a long minute, then pushed open the gate and stepped inside the little shop. Bolts of beautiful fabric lined the walls, far nicer than anything I worked with at home. A teenage girl stepped out from the back room. She was about 14, with long chestnut hair and the exact same hazel eyes as my Thomas, the same slight dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Can I help you find something?" Before I could answer, a man's voice called from the house. "Who is it, sweetheart?" The girl turned and shouted, "A customer, Dad." The curtain between the shop and the living area parted, and there stood Richard, my husband, the man who was supposed to be hundreds of miles away hauling freight. His face drained of all color. For a moment he looked as if he might faint. "Margaret," he whispered. The girl, Emily, I now realized, looked back and forth between us, confused. "You know each other?" At that exact moment, a woman walked in through the front door carrying shopping bags. She was about my age, stylishly dressed with soft waves in her hair and a warm, confident smile. When she saw me standing there, her smile froze. Richard's voice cracked. "Laura, this is Margaret." The bag slipped from her hands. Recognition, shock, then raw pain flashed across her face. I reached into my purse and slowly held up the birthday card. "I found this in his jacket," I said quietly. Laura's eyes filled with tears. Emily's face crumpled in confusion. "Mom? Dad? What's happening?" I took a deep breath and spoke the words that would change 4 lives forever. "My name is Margaret Thompson. I have been married to Richard for 13 years. We have 3 children together, Thomas, Sarah, and Benjamin, and I'm expecting our 4th in the fall." The room went still again. Emily began to cry softly. Laura sank onto the nearest chair as if her legs had given way. Richard looked from one of us to the other, a broken man caught between 2 worlds he had built with the same lies. That afternoon, the truth poured out like a flood. He had met Laura 2 years before he met me. When she became pregnant with Emily, he panicked. Instead of choosing, he chose both, marrying me in Detroit while telling Laura he was a widower who could never legally remarry because of pension issues. Every month, the money I thought was helping a sick sister was actually supporting this beautiful home, this little sewing business, and the daughter who looked so much like my own children. I looked at Laura, at Emily, at the comfortable life they had while I had taken in extra sewing at night and told my children we can't afford that this month. Then I looked at Richard. "You told her I was a school teacher with a good salary. You told me she was dying and needed every cent. All these years while I raised our babies alone, you were living 2 full lives, and we both were paying the price." Emily whispered through her tears, I have brothers and a sister I never knew about? I walked over to her slowly, my heart breaking for this innocent girl who had done nothing wrong. Yes, sweetheart, you have 3 siblings and 1 more on the way. They have your eyes. What happened after that afternoon is a story for another day. The long, painful conversations, the tears, the decisions we made for the children's sake. But on that spring day in 1980, standing in a little curtain shop in Cleveland, the life I thought I knew ended, and a far more honest one began. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever faced betrayal and found the strength to keep going, share a few words below. You are not alone. God bless you all. Until next time.